Hello everyone, it's Jean from the Inky Studio. Welcome, welcome. Today I am going to continue to work in the sewing journal that I've been creating. And it's coming along a little slowly. I kind of lost my mojo there, but I think I picked it back up. This is the cover, and I think I have a video out here that talked about the cover. I added some lace pockets here on the side of them and added a few ruffles here. I do have a bunch of fabric that I've ruffled up and sewn that I'll be putting on the edge of the pages. But today I'm going to be working with some ephemera that I've collected, some old packaging and you know, that type of pattern packaging and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be creating some kind of grungy ephemera for this. However, you can use these ideas and maybe create it in the style that you enjoy. So I have several projects here, and let's get started. For the first project, I'm going to start with an old vintage envelope, pattern envelope. And oftentimes I get them and they're kind of crumbly, and they really can't be used as an envelope anymore. So I'm just going to cut away different elements that I think I can use and make different types of projects from. And I'm going to cut away the bottom of the back and the flap here. Thought that was pretty interesting. And so I'm just going to focus on the images on the package, and I'm going to cut away the excess paper, and I'm going to glue this onto some cardstock because I want to make some paper dolls and I want them to hold up pretty well. And so when I go to cut them out, I like to leave a little line, a little white line around the image. And also, as I cut out, I know that somebody on this page is going to have their body cut apart because they're overlapping in some way. So I'm just, kind of thinking in my mind how I'm going to group them and cut them away. So in the end, I took the larger image and cut the smaller ones that were more in the foreground. I cut them kind of like into whole little pieces. And now I have some little paper dolls to use and trim up different pages or pockets or whatever. And I think I end up using those blue ones in another project. So the flap I thought was pretty interesting, and I'm going to leave a little bit on the other side so I could fold it over something. But of course this has to be backed up on something because the paper's so brittle. I'm just going to glue it to paper. I feel like pattern paper is, pretty heavy as it is. I don't mean heavy, but it's thick. Thicker than copy paper, and so if I just put it on another piece of paper, it should be just about right. And also, if I were to put this on to cardstock, I don't think I could fold it as neatly as I did. But you can experiment and see what consistency you need. So I'm going to make a tuck spot out of this. Just glue the little flap and glue it on one side of the page and fold it over on the next. So both pages get decorated. And so there's a little tuck spot there. Now for the bottom of the page, the most logical thing I could think of is a pocket, and I'm going to cut that down to size. And I decided to glue this onto scrapbook paper rather than cardstock. And it turned out really well, and it kind of cuts down the bulk a little bit when you can do that. And I sewed around it. And here's my little paper doll I'm going to add to the pocket. Really, really cute. I'm going to mark here about where I want the glue, how high I need the glue to be. And then I proceeded to glue it to the wrong side. Oh dear. Well, we all make mistakes, right? And I didn't know that until I started editing, and I thought, oh, look what I did. I put it on the wrong side. Oh well. It still looked okay. Just so her little head doesn't get bent over and floppy, I'm going to reinforce it with a little bit of cardstock on the other side. Just a little slip. And that way, maybe she won't get bent over when you put ephemera in and out. And so I will glue this down. And you'll never see the ephemera, the original vintage ephemera, but it's there. Well, sometimes we just have to go with it, don't we? It still turned out nice. I like it. The next one is a packaging for needles, and of course the cellophane that was there before is long gone, and I'm going to glue in some acrylic, and I'm using overhead projector sheets. That's what I use, but you know, you can collect acetate or whatever you get from packaging and use that in its place. Takes a little while for it to catch, especially onto something that's kind of thick. But you really wouldn't even have to use it and still get a good effect on your ephemera. So there's a little slit here in the back where the tab will fit down into. So I want to make sure I keep that later on. And I just size up my tag about how it should, about the size of it. And I felt like the back was just a little too grungy, just a little bit. And I just thought it would look better and add really more interest if I had some pattern paper on the back there. So I'm using a glue stick for the middle portion of it and going around the perimeter with my wet glue, my glitter glue there. And cut around it, cut away the excess. I think this paper is from the Pink Monarch prints. So I'm going to go ahead and recut that little slit there on the others for the other side that's been glued down, and we can still have that little closure. I decided to make an envelope out of this, and I'm going to put a little thumb notch so I can pull out my ephemera, and then glue around the two sides there to make an envelope. Now you could make a folio that folds out for sure, but because it was a little warped, the packaging was a little warped there on the bottom,
I thought that gluing it as an envelope would be best. And so before I attach my ephemera to that, I want to put some tissue paper on the back so that it's not quite so white. So I just glued it with my glue stick and then laid down the tissue paper. And it kind of just makes it a little less stark. Then I'm going to glue my ephemera piece onto it as a pocket. I previously made sure I knew where to glue it so it would show up in the window the way I'd like it to be. And there that is. So that turned out really cute. And there's my little tiny piece of ephemera. And it just fits back like so. And you can write on the back too if you want to. I saw the hole, the little hanging hole up there on top, and of course you got to do something with that, and I'm just going to put in a little piece of cloth that I've torn a little strip from. And voila! The next piece, I'm using the instructions inside the pattern paper, and I'm going to cut out the two sections that I liked, and that's the two blue sections there. And I'm going to glue them onto paper because of course they're quite brittle. So I'll use my glue stick to get them glued on. And I also went around the perimeter with my glitter glue after I did the glue stick. And that's glued on, nicely reinforced. So here, I probably should not have folded this right away. I folded it and left like a 1/2 inch border on the left side there, but it would have been better had I just first went through and scored that fold first. And so I'm just using a ruler and a stylus pen about a 1/2 inch. And I see this edge, maybe I didn't catch it like I should have, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in there and get that glued down. After I did the edge, folded the edge, then I could better have, wouldn't have had to go back and cut this shorter. I could have lined it up a little bit better, but it still worked out. And so now I need to miter the different edges. Oh, no, before they do that, I'm going to cut a 1/2 inch down off the bottom of the back. So you see the left side and the bottom have a 1/2 inch hanging over. I'm going to miter the edges. Yeah, I'll get my act together here pretty soon. Now, I'm going to come up here and do a straight cut. Cut out that corner, miter those corners then. And now I'm going to glue all those flaps over. And it's a nice little envelope all ready to fill with your favorite ephemera. whether you want to put in a whole bunch of little pieces or one big tag. And I think for this I'm going to put a thumb notch in it as well. And ink all around. This last piece is, I didn't film the construction, but it's just 2 pieces of cardstock I've glued together. And I sewed lines for like writing. I should have sewed the whole tag, but I didn't. I just sewed the top part and then glued on a pocket. But it looks nice. And I also wanted to point out that on the instruction sheet, I like to go in and cut words out that I can use to put here and there. So here, this was part of that title, and I just put the words down there, and I'm going to use the other words here and there in the journal.
Well, there you have it. Here's our ephemera. Of course, they're little paper dolls, but I've already used all the other paper dolls. Yeah, I really enjoy that idea. And our little envelope here with our ephemera tucked in the side, little tie up there, so cute. And this here, I think I tried to explain. I should have sewn these lines all across before I glued the pocket on, and that way you could have had all these to write on, but it's fine. It turned out nice. And then of course I put a little bit of lace on the bottom of that envelope package, put in some ephemera, and have a little, put in a large tag on the inside. I think I'll also probably find other things to put in there. I did come across this really nifty receipt, old receipt from Mary Lester Fabrics. Don't know where that was, but that has been a while. So I'll probably put that, I will be putting that in there along with it. So thank you so much for viewing. I hope that helped to give you some ideas, and I so much appreciate you meeting with me. I am going to be working on the sewing journal a little bit more, and hopefully we're getting that much closer to the flip through. We'll talk to you later. Have a crafty day. Bye.